Last night, after a party, I never imagined that my life would be turned upside down by secrets I never knew existed. While I was in the kitchen cleaning up, I overheard Chris, my brother-in-law, talking outside on the deck, and what I heard was shocking. His words about my husband left me bewildered, and then the evidence Chris sent me was like a storm that swept away everything I believed. Can I trust what I'm seeing? It all started when I heard Chris talking to Jennifer, a woman he graduated with. They were standing outside, and although I wasn't eavesdropping on purpose, their words were so clear that I couldn't help but listen. Chris began complimenting Jennifer, calling her beautiful and pretty. But what really caught my attention was when Jennifer randomly looked up his girlfriend's profile on Facebook. She complimented his girlfriend for being beautiful too, but Chris's reaction made me uneasy. He began talking about his relationship, casually mentioning that they were going through some issues and weren't officially a couple anymore, but rather in an open relationship. Jennifer seemed surprised, but she didn't make a big deal out of it. However, things took a strange turn when Chris, after a bit of hesitation, said, "If I were your husband, you wouldn't have a problem with this." Jennifer's response left me even more stunned. "Your husband is loyal, he wouldn't cheat on his wife." But Chris didn't stop there. He kept talking about my husband's infidelity, even claiming that my husband cheats all the time. His words shook me. Chris also revealed that my husband had slept with a coworker, and worse, that he was planning to continue sleeping with her. I couldn't stand it anymore. Jennifer, clearly taken aback, told Chris he needed to sober up and walked away. But when Chris stormed into the kitchen and saw me there, I knew my life would never be the same. He bluntly told me that everything he said was true and that he wasn't afraid to reveal it. He then got into a huge screaming match with my husband, accusing him of not deserving everything he had and claiming my husband had forced him to keep secrets from the past. I felt like I was standing in the middle of a storm. Could everything Chris said be true? Could the screenshots, photos, and videos he sent me be evidence of what had happened, or was this just a game to tear down my husband? And why did my husband say all of it was fake? After hearing Chris's words and the chaos he caused, I couldn't just ignore it. I decided to go through the evidence Chris had sent me, screenshots and videos of conversations between him and my husband. The messages didn't just relate to past conversations, but included recent exchanges, leaving me questioning everything I was seeing. These images were painful to look at, with words I couldn't deny, but I couldn't ignore one big question. Were these pieces of evidence truly reliable? My husband immediately denied everything. He claimed the messages were fake and that Chris had prepared them beforehand, using tricks to fabricate these conversations. He insisted Chris just wanted to stir up chaos and had planned everything to ruin our relationship. I couldn't help but feel uneasy about these excuses. If these messages were fake, could they really have been created so easily? I knew not everything could be explained clearly, but the truth was I couldn't disregard the evidence I had in front of me. What troubled me even more were the videos Chris had sent. In the videos, I could clearly see the Messenger app open, with the conversations visible and time-stamped. While I knew it was possible to use apps to edit and fabricate conversations, I couldn't understand how he could create videos like this. Videos that recorded every moment as he opened the app, clicked on the conversations, and viewed each message. Some of these conversations closely matched the ones I had seen on my husband's phone, with details like participant names, times, and the manner in which they were chatting. Even recent conversations between my husband and Chris that I knew about were in those videos. However, one strange thing was that in all of the evidence, my husband didn't have any of these messages on his phone. He claimed they were deleted for security reasons, and when I asked him to check, his phone showed no record of any conversations with Chris about these issues. This only made me more confused. If the messages truly existed, why didn't they show up on my husband's phone? And how was Chris able to provide all this evidence without any trace on my husband's side? With all this evidence, I couldn't help but ask myself whether I was being deceived, and whether my husband was truly telling the truth or just covering something up. Could Chris really have created all this just out of jealousy and resentment toward my husband, Or was my husband trying to hide something? These questions kept me from stopping, and I knew I needed to find the truth before it was too late. As I thought more about this, I couldn't ignore Chris's motives. Why would he go so far? The messages and videos seemed undeniable, and they left me bewildered. However, the more I thought about it, the more I realized that Chris wasn't someone who would easily forgive, and the tension between him and my husband might have played a significant role in this situation. Chris had always felt abandoned and unfairly treated since childhood. While my husband received support from our parents, financially and otherwise, Chris didn't have that same care. Their relationship had been tense for years, with Chris harboring anger at his brother who was always favored. When my husband and I began stabilizing our lives, buying a house and having children, Chris was struggling. He was facing financial issues and hadn't received help from the family like we had, which only deepened his jealousy and resentment. I understood that the relationship between my husband and Chris had never been simple. Even though I knew my husband had tried to help his brother, nothing seemed to alleviate the resentment growing inside Chris. He felt overshadowed by my husband's success, seeing it as a constant reminder of his own failures. This didn't just make him angry, but it nurtured a deep-seated resentment. Looking back at recent events, I realized that Chris's rejection by Jennifer might have been a huge blow for him. He'd tried so hard to attract her attention, but she only praised my husband, someone Chris had always envied. When Jennifer flatly rejected him and praised my husband's loyalty and kindness, it could have been the tipping point that pushed Chris to say the things he did, including claiming that my husband frequently cheated, despite no evidence. The relationship between Chris and my husband had always been strained, but I never expected things to escalate this far. The situation became even more serious when Chris didn't just reveal secrets about my husband, but also attempted to shake my trust in him. His words became more frightening as he claimed my husband cheated all the time and even detailed a past affair with a coworker, which left me more confused than ever. Despite my husband's denials, the doubts within me weren't so easily erased. I couldn't help but wonder if Chris was really doing all of this out of jealousy and resentment, or if there was something else behind his accusations that I hadn't yet uncovered. The evidence he presented had clearly shaken my trust, but could everything simply be part of a vengeful plan from a disgruntled younger brother, or was there a deeper truth to his claims that I hadn't seen? The sense of uncertainty and anxiety about the unknown made it impossible for me to make a clear decision. Now, my life seemed to be split into two irreconcilable parts. One side was everything I knew and trusted about my husband, and the other was the doubts growing from the evidence Chris presented. I couldn't help but think about the conflict between what I saw, what I knew, and the constant explanations from my husband. Each time he insisted that everything was just a game Chris was playing, I felt a part of me was losing trust in him. Our relationship had never been perfect, but now this uncertainty was pushing me into a corner, not knowing which way to go. When my husband and I went through the evidence Chris had sent me, we encountered more inconsistencies. Particularly when we cross-referenced the phone bills, we couldn't find any trace of the conversations Chris claimed had taken place. While there were detailed video recordings of conversations on Messenger, those messages didn't appear in my husband's chat history. This made me even more confused. Could he have deleted these messages to hide the truth? Or had Chris manipulated the situation and used apps to create fake evidence? This growing sense of uncertainty weighed heavily on me, and I found it difficult to make a definitive decision about what had really happened. The situation didn't just stop at the messages and evidence. The strained relationship between my husband and Chris had always been tense. Chris had always felt mistreated by the family, which only intensified the tension between him and my husband. Over the years, my husband had tried to help Chris, but it seemed nothing could ease the bitterness inside him. Furthermore, our success in life, from buying a house, having children, and receiving financial help from the family, might have left Chris feeling left behind. And now, it seemed like he was using every opportunity to undermine the trust I had in my husband. When my husband and I went to Chris's house to find out more, things only became more complicated. Chris couldn't provide the original messages he claimed to have screenshots of, only videos and pictures taken through apps. He insisted that the messages had been deleted for security reasons, but I couldn't understand why all the evidence would be erased while still appearing clearly in the videos Chris sent. This made it impossible for me to make a clear judgment on what was truly going on. I couldn't help but wonder if I was being deceived, or if everything was just a revenge scheme from an angry younger brother. Was Chris's jealousy and resentment big enough to create a story like this? Or was there really a truth behind his accusations that I hadn't recognized? My relationship with my husband was being pushed to the edge, and I couldn't continue living in this state of uncertainty. I needed to uncover the truth, no matter how painful it might be.